She spent her last set pięćdziesiąt on a half-sunken prison that everyone said would crumble into the river within a year, and the whole town laughed at the single mother who'd clearly lost her mind. But when she finally drained the flooded warden's private chamber and pried open the corroded steel vault embedded in the submerged floor, what she discovered would silence every cruel laugh and prove that sometimes the most valuable treasures lie beneath the water nobody dares to explore. Before we dive into the story, make sure to smash subscribe. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today, because tomorrow we have an extra special story for you that will blow your mind. The morning fog rolled off the Clearwater River like smoke, obscuring everything except the rusted guard tower that jutted above the waterline. Maya Rodriguez stood on the muddy bank, her 9-year-old son Daniel beside her, both staring at the partially submerged structure that everyone in Riverside, Oregon called the Drowning Blackstone Correctional Facility, had been built too close to the river in 1958, and when the dam failed in 1987, the eastern wing had slowly begun its descent into the water. For 36 years, it had sat there, half on land, half claimed by the river, a monument to poor planning and nature's patience. "Mum," Daniel said quietly, his voice barely audible over the rushing water. "Are we really going to live there?" Maya couldn't answer right away. She was too busy trying to convince herself this wasn't the worst decision she'd ever made. But looking at the eviction notice stuffed in her jacket pocket, at the 650 in cash she'd withdrawn from her last paycheck, at the processing plant, at the foreclosure auction flyer that had led her here, she knew she'd already made it. The auctioneer, a woman named Patricia Owens, emerged from a beaten pickup truck, clipboard in hand. She looked at Maya with a mixture of pity and disbelief. "You're the one who called?" Patricia asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "About the Blackstone property?" "I am," Maya said, straightening her shoulders, despite the fear coiling in her stomach. "Mom, I have to be honest with you. This isn't a fixer-upper situation. The eastern wing is completely flooded. The western wing has water damage throughout. The foundation is compromised. The county is only selling it because demolition would cost more than they can budget." "What's the starting bid?" Patricia consulted her clipboard, though Maya suspected she already knew the number by heart. 650. "But before you, I'll take it." The words came out before Maya could stop them. Patricia's eyes widened. "Don't you want to see it first? Have an inspection? Talk to—" "I've driven past it every day for 5 years," Maya interrupted. "I know what I'm looking at." What she didn't say was that she'd been obsessed with this place since she was a teenager. Her grandfather had been a guard here before the flooding, and he'd told her stories about the prison's history, about Warden Castellano who'd run the facility with an iron fist and mysterious wealth, about the rumors that had swirled when he died suddenly in 1986, just a year before the dam failed. A small crowd had gathered, drawn by the spectacle of the auction. Maya recognized most of them. Sandra from the grocery store, Jeff who ran the gas station, even her former supervisor at the plant, Richard, who'd laid her off 2 months ago with barely a second glance. "This is happening?" someone called out. "Someone's actually bidding?" "That's Maya Rodriguez," another voice said. "Garcia's daughter, the one who lost her job. Single mom, right? What's she thinking?" "Probably isn't thinking at all." The whispers cut through the fog like knives. Maya felt Daniel press against her side, felt his small hand slip into hers. She squeezed back, trying to channel strength she didn't feel. "Any other bids?" Patricia called out, her voice carrying across the muddy bank. Silence. Then, laughter. Actual laughter. From the crowd. "Going once." Patricia continued, looking uncomfortable. Going twice. She paused, giving Maya one last chance to reconsider. When Maya didn't move, she brought down her gavel against her clipboard with a sharp crack. Sold to Miss Rodriguez for 650. The crowd erupted. Maya heard every word as she walked forward to sign the paperwork. Can't even afford rent, but she buys a sinking prison. That building's going to collapse into the river any day now. Feel sorry for that kid. What kind of mother? Actually, you know what? Maybe it's perfect. Crazy woman belongs in a prison. Maya's hand shook as she signed her name, but she kept her face neutral. She'd learned long ago that showing weakness only made the mockery worse. Patricia handed her a set of keys, rusty and heavy. Miss Rodriguez, Patricia said quietly, I have to give you this. She pulled out an official-looking document. Liability waiver. The county won't be responsible for any injuries or deaths on the property. The structural integrity is severely compromised. Maya took the paper, scanned it quickly, and signed. There's one more thing, Patricia added, even quieter now. Your grandfather, he left something for you. He told me years ago before he died that if you ever bought this place, I should tell you. She leaned in close. He said to look in the warden's chamber. Said Castellano was hiding more than just his cruelty behind those walls. Before Maya could respond, Patricia walked away, leaving her standing there with keys in one hand, paperwork in the other, and a mystery she didn't understand. Richard, her former supervisor, approached with a smirk that made Maya's stomach turn. Well, Maya, I hope you know what you're doing. Though from where I'm standing you just threw away your last bit of money on a death trap. He looked at Daniel. Hope you're a good swimmer, kid. You're going to need to be. The crowd dispersed slowly. Still talking, still laughing. Maya heard. Car doors slam. Engine start. Soon it was just her and Daniel standing before their new home, if you could call it that. Mama, Daniel said, his voice small. What did that lady mean about Grandpa? Maya looked down at her son. He had her dark hair and his father's green eyes. The father who'd left when Daniel was 2, unable to handle the responsibility of parenthood. For 7 years, it had been just the two of them against the world. And now, they had this. Your grandpa used to work here, Maya explained. He was a good man who paid attention to things other people missed. Maybe he saw something important. Like treasure? Maya smiled, despite everything. Maybe, baby, maybe. They approached the main entrance, or what remained of it. The western wing stood partially on dry land. Though stood, was generous. The building sagged, water-stained, and decrepit. But as they climbed the crumbling steps, and Maya fitted the key into the lock, she noticed something unexpected. The door opened smoothly. Someone had maintained the hinges. Inside, the air was thick with mold and the smell of river water. But there was something else, too. As Maya's eyes adjusted to the dim light, she realized the interior wasn't as destroyed as everyone claimed. Yes, there was damage. Yes, the floors were warped and the walls were stained. But someone had been here, recently. Footprints in the dust led down the main corridor. Stay close, Maya told Daniel, gripping his hand tighter. They followed the footprints through what had been the administrative section, past offices still containing desks and filing cabinets, past a mess hall with tables bolted to the floor. The footprints led to a staircase, and Maya realized with growing dread that they went down, toward the flooded sections. At the bottom of the stairs, water lapped at the last step. The footprints disappeared into the dark liquid that filled the lower level. Maya aimed her flashlight into the water, but the beam didn't penetrate far. It was murky, filled with debris, and who knew what else. We can't go down there, Daniel whispered. He was right. They couldn't. If you find this story engaging, Please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. Not today, not without preparation. But the footprints meant someone else had been exploring. Someone else knew about whatever was down there. They retreated upstairs and spent the rest of the day exploring the dry sections. The guard quarters on the upper floor were actually habitable. If you could get past the mold and the eerie feeling of living in a place where men had once been caged, Maya found a set of rooms that must have belonged to senior staff. They were larger, with actual windows that still had glass in them. One room in particular caught her attention. Unlike the others, its door had been reinforced, not from the outside, to keep someone in, but from the inside, to keep someone out. The lock had been replaced recently. She could tell by the fresh scratches around the keyhole. None of the keys on her ring fit. Someone's been living here, Maya said aloud, more to herself than to Daniel. As if in response they heard it. A sound from somewhere below, not the creaking of old wood or the dripping of water. Footsteps. Real human footsteps, walking through the flooded sections below. Maya's heart hammered. She grabbed Daniel and pulled him into one of the rooms, closing the door quietly. They waited in the darkness, barely breathing. The footsteps grew louder, climbing the stairs. They walked down the hallway outside, slow and methodical, as if searching for something. Then they stopped, right outside their door. Maya held Daniel so tight she worried she might hurt him, but he didn't make a sound. They waited. 1 minute, 2, 5. Finally, the footsteps retreated. Back down the hall, back down the stairs, back into the water below. They waited another 20 minutes before emerging. The hallway was empty, but now Maya noticed something she'd missed before. Wet footprints leading from the stairs. Not just wet, but muddy, with a strange reddish tint that didn't match the river mud. Whatever was down in that flooded section, someone was very interested in it. That night, they stayed in a motel across town, the last of Maya's money going to a room with 2 beds and a working heater. Daniel fell asleep quickly, exhausted by the day's adventure. Maya sat awake, thinking about her grandfather's message, about the footsteps, about the mystery of Warden Castellano. She pulled out her phone and started researching. What she found made her blood run cold. Warden Frank Castellano had run Blackstone Correctional for 28 years, from 1958 to 1986. By all accounts, he'd been ruthless but effective, keeping one of the tightest-run facilities in the state. But there had been rumors, whispers of prisoners disappearing from records, of visitors who paid mysterious fees, of wealth that didn't match a warden's salary. Then, in March 1986, he'd been found dead in his private chambers. Heart attack, the official report said. But the investigation had been cursory at best, and his estate had been settled quietly. When the dam failed a year later and the prison began to flood, most of the records had been lost. Maya found one more thing, though. A newspaper article from 1985, just a year before Castellano died. It was about a jewelry heist in Portland, one of the largest in Oregon history, $3 million in uncut gemstones, stolen from a private collector who'd recently acquired them from an estate sale. The gems were never recovered. The thieves were never caught. And according to the article, the collector had been a silent partner in the private prison system, including Blackstone Correctional. Maya stared at her phone screen, pieces clicking into place. The warden's mysterious wealth, the sealed chamber, the footprints in the water. Someone else knew. Someone else was searching, but she'd gotten there first. The next morning, Maya made a decision. She couldn't afford proper equipment, but she could afford something. She drove to a sporting goods store on the edge of town and bought a wetsuit, waterproof flashlight, and diving mask with the last 200 on her credit card. The clerk, a teenager named Josh, looked at her purchases with raised eyebrows. Going diving? Something like that. In the river? Ma'am, I don't know if that's… I know what I'm doing. Maya lied. She didn't know what she was doing. She had no diving experience, no training, no backup plan, but she had determination, born from years of being underestimated, overlooked, and dismissed. She had the strength that came from single motherhood, from working 3 jobs while raising a son alone, from surviving when everyone expected her to fail, and she had a treasure to find. That afternoon, after dropping Daniel at her sister Carmen's house with a vague excuse about cleaning the prison, Maya returned to Blackstone. The fog was thicker today, muffling sound, making the partially submerged building look even stiffened, more sinister. She changed into the wetsuit in one of the upper rooms, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it over the rushing river outside. This was insane. This was dangerous. This was potentially suicidal. She did it anyway. The water at the bottom of the stairs was shockingly cold, despite the wetsuit. Maya gasped as she lowered herself in, the flashlight strapped to her wrist, casting wild shadows on the waterlogged walls. The current was stronger than she'd expected, pulling at her legs, trying to drag her toward the eastern wing, where the building had collapsed into the river. She fought against it, using the stair railing as an anchor. The corridor ahead was completely submerged, disappearing into murky darkness. Maya took a deep breath and pushed forward. Underwater, the prison was a nightmare landscape. Debris floated everywhere. Furniture, files, pieces of ceiling. She had to navigate carefully, avoiding sharp edges and weak sections of floor. The beam of her flashlight cut through the water, revealing cells on either side, their bars rusted and twisted. She followed the corridor, counting doors. Her grandfather had been specific in the message relayed through Patricia. The warden's chamber. It would be in the administrative section, past the infirmary, next to what had been the segregation wing. Maya's lungs began to burn. She hadn't practiced holding her breath, hadn't prepared properly. Panic clawed at her throat. She was about to turn back when she saw it. A door, heavier than the others, made of reinforced steel instead of wood. Unlike everything else down here, it looked deliberately sealed, with a lock mechanism that seemed far too sophisticated for a Tijon Jevienset Osham Dejans prison. Maya surfaced, gasping for air, in a small pocket that had formed near the ceiling. The air was stale and foul, but breathable. She treaded water, catching her breath, staring down at the sealed door below. This was it. This had to be it. She dove again, swimming down to examine the door more closely. The lock was complex, but years underwater had corroded it. Maya pulled a crowbar from her belt, the one she'd bought on impulse at the hardware store, and wedged it into the gap between door and frame. She pulled. Nothing. Pulled again. Still. Nothing. The current fought her, trying to sweep her away. Her lungs screamed for air. She pulled one more time with everything she had. The door groaned, shifted, and suddenly gave way. Maya shot up to the air pocket, gasping, dizzy from exertion. But she'd done it. The door was open. What she found inside would change everything. What happens next will reveal why a warden lived modestly but died mysteriously, why someone else has been searching these flooded halls, and why Maya's Sześć-set-pięćdziesiąt gamble is about to turn into the discovery of a lifetime. If you're enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Maya dove back down, swimming through the open doorway into Warden Castellano's private chamber. Even underwater, she could tell this room had been special. Where the rest of the prison was utilitarian concrete and steel, this space had been finished with wood paneling, decorative tiles, the trappings of someone who'd lived better than his salary suggested. But what caught her attention was the floor. In the center of the room, barely visible under decades of silt, was a steel plate, not part of the original construction, Maya realized. This had been added later, installed deliberately to conceal something beneath. She surfaced again, filled her lungs, and dove back down. The silt was thick, but she swept it away with her hands, revealing the full extent of the plate. It was massive, maybe 4 feet square, with bolt heads at each corner. Maya tried the crowbar on the bolts. They were rusted solid. She tried again, putting her full weight behind it. Nothing. Frustration surged through her. She was so close, she could feel it. Then she remembered something her grandfather had taught her when she was little. Rust is patient, he'd said, but it's also brittle. Sometimes you don't need to remove something. You just need to break it. Maya positioned the crowbar at the edge of the plate and hammered down with the heel of her hand. Once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th strike, she felt something give. A bolt head had sheared off. She moved to the next corner, then the next. Her lungs burned. Her muscles screamed. But one by one, the bolts gave way. Finally, with all 4 corners freed, Maya wedged the crowbar under the plate and pried. The steel groaned, shifted, and lifted. Beneath it was a vault, a waterproof steel box maybe 3 feet deep, sealed with a combination lock that looked far more sophisticated than anything else in the prison. Maya's hands shook as she examined it. This was military-grade equipment. This was serious. This was real. She surfaced, breathing hard, her mind racing. She needed help, professional help. But who could she trust? If her suspicions were correct, if this vault contained what she thought it did, then involving the wrong people could be deadly. She was so lost in thought that she almost didn't hear the sound above the water. Footsteps. Multiple people this time, moving through the upper levels of the prison. Maya's blood turned to ice. She extinguished her flashlight and pressed herself against the wall in the darkness, treading water silently. Through the flooded doorway, she could hear muffled voices. 2 men, maybe 3, searching. "She's been here," one voice said. "Recent footprints upstairs. Wetsuit fibers. On the stairs. Check the flooded sections," another voice ordered. "If she found the chamber, we need to know." Maya's heart pounded so loud she was certain they'd hear it. She watched through the murky water as lights appeared in the corridor outside. Flashlight beams cutting through the darkness, searching. She had 2 choices: hide and hope they didn't find the warden's chamber, or make a run for it. But running meant leaving the vault, leaving whatever fortune lay inside. And something told her, if she left now, she'd never get another chance. The lights grew closer. Maya took a deep breath and dove, swimming down to the vault. Her fingers found the combination lock. She had no idea what the code might be, but she had to try something. She started with the obvious. 1998, the year the prison opened. The lock didn't budge. She tried 1996, the year Castellano died. Nothing. She was running out of air, running out of time. Then she remembered the newspaper article. The jewelry heist. 1995. The lock clicked open. Maya's lungs screamed for air, but she couldn't surface now. The men were right outside, their lights sweeping the chamber. She opened the vault as quietly as she could, praying it wouldn't make noise underwater. Inside were dozens of waterproof bags, the kind the military used for sensitive equipment. Maya grabbed one and shot up to her air pocket, pressing herself into the smallest space possible. Through a gap in the debris, she watched the men enter the chamber. There were 3 of them, all wearing expensive diving gear, all looking professional and dangerous. "The vault's open," one of them said, his voice echoing strangely in the flooded room. "Someone beat us to it. How much is gone? Can't tell. But whoever took it is still here. No way they could have left without us seeing them." Maya held her breath. Literally. and figuratively. She clutched the waterproof bag against her chest, feeling something hard and lumpy inside. The men searched for another 5 minutes, their light sweeping dangerously close to her hiding spot. Then one of them spoke into a radio. "Base, this is Team 1. We have a situation. The vault's been compromised. Requesting backup and authorization to secure the asset." Asset. They meant her. Maya was the asset. "Copy that," a voice crackled back. "Backup is 20 minutes out. Secure all exits. Asset is not to leave the premises." The men swam out, moving to block the stairwell. Maya waited until their lights disappeared, then silently pulled herself out of the air pocket. She had 20 minutes to get out, before more men arrived. 20 minutes to escape from people who clearly had resources she couldn't match. But Maya Rodriguez hadn't survived as a single mother by giving up when things got hard. She'd survived by being smarter, tougher, and more determined than anyone expected. She swam through the flooded chamber, but instead of heading for the main stairwell where the men waited, she went deeper into the eastern wing, the collapsed section. The part everyone said was too dangerous to explore. She remembered her grandfather's stories. He'd told her once that the eastern wing had an emergency exit, installed during construction in case of riots or fires. It led directly to the river, designed so guards could evacuate without going through the prison proper. If it still existed, if the collapse hadn't destroyed it, it was her only chance. Maya swam through the darkness, feeling along the walls, fighting the current that grew stronger as she approached the fully submerged sections. Debris caught at her wetsuit, tore at her skin. She was running out of air, running out of time. Then she felt it. A doorframe, half buried in collapsed concrete. She pulled herself through, her flashlight revealing a narrow tunnel that angled upward. The emergency exit. Maya kicked hard, following the tunnel. It was partially blocked in places, forcing her to squeeze through gaps that scraped her shoulders and back. But it was leading up, toward air, toward freedom. Her lungs were on fire when she finally burst through the surface. She was in the river, 50 yards from the prison, behind a pile of debris that hid her from view. The current pulled at her, trying to drag her downstream, but she fought her way to the muddy bank and collapsed, gasping. She'd made it. She'd actually made it. Maya looked back at the prison. Men were emerging from the western entrance, spreading out to search the perimeter. She heard radios crackling, orders being shouted, but she was already too far away, hidden by fog and darkness. She clutched the waterproof bag tighter and ran. Back at the motel, with the door locked and chained, Maya finally opened the bag. Her hands shook as she unsealed the waterproof layers. Inside were gems, dozens of them, uncut diamonds, sapphires, emeralds, rubies. They spilled across the cheap motel bedspread, catching the fluorescent light, throwing rainbow colors across the walls. Each stone was the size of a grape, or larger. Some were the size of walnuts. Maya had taken exactly one bag, one out of what had looked like 40 or 50 in the vault. And if this single bag was worth what she thought it was, the total fortune hidden in that flooded chamber was staggering. She thought of the newspaper article, 300 million in stolen gems, hidden for nearly 40 years. Warden Castellano must have been involved in the heist, using his position to hide the stones where no one would look. Then he died before retrieving them, taking the secret to his grave. Until the dam failed, until the prison flooded, until the gems became even more inaccessible, locked away beneath tons of river water. Until a single mother, with 600 and nothing to lose, had bought the building everyone said was worthless. Maya pulled out her phone with shaking hands. She needed help, real help. But who? The men searching the prison had resources, organization, probably connections to law enforcement. If she went to the local police, she might be walking into a trap. She scrolled through her contacts. stopping at a name she hadn't called in years. Detective Maria Santos, her mother's cousin, who worked for the state police in Salem. They'd been close once, before Maya's life had fallen apart after Daniel's father left. Maria had always said, if Maya ever needed anything at all to call, it was time to take her up on that offer. Maya? Maria's voice was thick with sleep when she answered. Is that you? It's 3 a.m. I know. I'm sorry, but I need help. Real help. And I need you to promise you'll hear me out before you decide I'm crazy. There was a pause. Then, Maria's voice came back, clear and alert. Tell me everything. Maya talked for 30 minutes, explaining the auction, the prison, the vault, the men who'd tried to trap her. She described the gems, sent photos. Maria listened without interrupting, her silence both comforting and terrifying. When Maya finally finished, Maria was quiet for a long moment. You know what you found, don't you? Maria said finally. The Portland heist. $985. It was the biggest unsolved case in state history. The FBI's been looking for those gems for 30 years. So, I should call them? No, Maria said quickly. Not yet. If those men who came after you have the resources you described, they might have people inside agencies. You call the wrong field office, and you might disappear, like Warden Castellano. She paused. Give me 12 hours. I have contacts at the federal level, people I trust. Let me make some calls. But Maya, you need to stay hidden. Don't go back to that prison. Don't talk to anyone else. Can you do that? I can try. And Maya, what you did was incredibly brave and incredibly stupid. Promise me you won't go back in that water. Maya looked at the gems spread across her bed. She thought of the 30+ bags still in the vault, of the fortune waiting beneath the river. She thought of Daniel's future, of all the people she could help, of proving wrong everyone who'd laughed at her. I promise, she lied. The next 12 hours passed in agonizing slowness. Maya kept Daniel home from school, told Carmen she was dealing with paperwork for the prison purchase. She and her son stayed in the motel room, watching television, trying to act normal, while a fortune in stolen gems sat, hidden in a locked suitcase under the bed. Maria called back exactly 12 hours later. I have someone who wants to meet with you. Special Agent David Reeves, FBI, Art Crime Team. He's been chasing the Portland heist for 15 years. He's clean, Maya. I'd stake my career on it. They met that evening in a coffee shop, 2 towns over. Agent Reeves was younger than Maya expected, maybe 40, with tired eyes that suggested he'd seen too much. With him was a gemologist from the FBI's lab, a quiet woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, who examined Maya's bag of stones with growing amazement. These are real, Dr. Chen said finally, looking up from her portable equipment. The size, quality, cut patterns, everything matches the Portland heist. Do you know what you've found? A lot of trouble, Maya said. Reeves smiled slightly. That's one way to put it. The other way is the recovery of one of the most significant art and jewelry thefts in American history. He leaned forward. Miss Rodriguez, I need to know everything. Where exactly is the vault? How many bags did you see? And most importantly, who else knows about it? Maya told him about the men at the prison, their professional equipment, their radio communications. Reeves's expression darkened. That would be the Castellano family, he said. The warden's nephews. We've had them on our radar for years. Organized crime connections, money laundering, suspected involvement in several unsolved murders. They've been watching that prison for decades, waiting for their chance to retrieve the gems. Then, why didn't they just buy it when it went up for auction? Maya asked. Because they didn't know exactly where the vault was. Their uncle died without telling them. They needed someone else to explore, to find it for them. They've probably been monitoring the property, waiting for someone desperate or curious enough to do the dangerous work. Maya's blood ran cold. So I was doing their job for them. You were, but you also beat them to it. That bag you took contains gems worth, approximately, 8 million. The full vault, based on the original heist, should contain stones worth close to 295 million. The number hung in the air like smoke. 295 million. Hidden in a flooded prison that Maya had bought for 650. What happens now? She asked quietly. Reeves exchanged a glance with Dr. Chen. Officially, those gems are stolen property. They'd need to be returned to the insurance company that paid out the claim back in 1985. But, he paused, there's a reward. 10% of the recovered value. And given the circumstances, given that you risked your life and led us to the location, I'd say you have a strong case for claiming it. 10% of 295 million. Maya's math skills weren't great, but even she could calculate that. 29,5 million. Her hands started shaking. She clasped them together under the table, trying to process what she was hearing. She'd gone from evicted single mother to potential multimillionaire in 3 days. But, first, Reeves continued, we need to recover the rest of the gems. Which means, we need to go back to that prison. And we need to do it before the Castellano family realizes we're involved. Over the next week, everything moved with military precision. Agent Reeves brought in a specialized team, divers from the FBI's Underwater Recovery Unit, tactical agents to provide security. They set up a command post in a warehouse across the river from the prison, using drones and surveillance equipment to monitor anyone approaching the site. Maya insisted on being there, despite Reeves's objections. That's my property, she said firmly, and I found the vault. I'm not sitting on the sidelines while you take over. They went in at dawn, when the fog was thickest. Maya led them through the flooded sections, showing them the route to the warden's chamber. Professional divers made quick work of retrieving the remaining bags, each one carefully catalogued and sealed in evidence containers. It took 6 hours to recover everything. When they finally surfaced the last bag, Dr. Chen did a preliminary count. 47 bags total, each containing between 5 and 7 million in gems. The total value came to just over 287 million. Close enough to the original estimate to confirm this was indeed the Portland heist recovery. But as they were packing up the equipment, one of the surveillance agents called out a warning. We have vehicles approaching. 4 SUVs, moving fast. The Castellano family had arrived. What happened next would transform a crime scene into a showdown. A frightened single mother into a witness who'd change criminal justice history, and a sunken prison into ground zero for the largest gem recovery in FBI history. Stay tuned to see how one woman's courage turns mockery into vindication. The SUVs screeched to a stop outside the prison gates. Men poured out, maybe 12 or 15 of them, all wearing tactical gear. Through binoculars, Reeves identified the leader. That's Anthony Castellano, the warden's oldest nephew, head of the family now. What do we do? Maya asked, her heart pounding. We don't do anything. You stay here. Reeves turned to his tactical team. Positions. Let's remind these gentlemen what happens when they interfere with a federal investigation. But Maya wasn't about to hide. Not now. Not after everything she'd been through. She walked out of the warehouse, before anyone could stop her, crossing the muddy bank toward the prison gates. Miss Rodriguez, Reeves called after her. Get back here. She ignored him. She was done being afraid, done being mocked, done letting other people tell her what she could and couldn't do. Anthony Castellano was exactly what she expected. Expensive suit ruined by mud, designer sunglasses, an air of entitlement that had probably never been challenged. He saw her coming and smiled, but it was the smile of a shark. "You must be the new owner," he said pleasantly. "Maya Rodriguez, right? The single mom who bought my uncle's prison for pocket change. And you must be Anthony Castellano," Maya replied, keeping her voice steady. "The nephew who's been watching this place for 40 years. Too scared to do the diving yourself." His smile faltered. "I don't know what you think you found in there, but 287 million in gems from the Portland heist," Maya interrupted. "The FBI is here. They've recovered everything. It's over." Anthony's face darkened. "That's family property. My uncle. Your uncle was a thief and a murderer," Maya said. "And the only thing your family is going to inherit is a criminal investigation." She heard footsteps behind her. Reeves and his team had emerged from the warehouse, weapons drawn, badges displayed. "Anthony Castellano," Reeves called out. "We have warrants for your arrest, and for the arrest of 7 other family members in connection with the 1985 Portland jewelry heist, conspiracy to commit murder, and obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent." What followed was chaos. Some of Castellano's men tried to run, others reached for weapons. But they were outnumbered and outgunned. FBI tactical agents swarmed in, and within minutes, the entire group was in custody. Maya stood there watching, barely able to process what was happening. It was real. All of it was real. The gems, the fortune, the vindication. Anthony Castellano was being led away in handcuffs when he turned back to Maya. "You have no idea what you've done," he snarled. "You think this is over? The people we work with, the connections we have." "The connections you had," Reeves corrected. "We've been monitoring your organization for months, waiting for you to make a move. Miss Rodriguez gave us exactly the leverage we needed. Your family's done, Castellano." As the SUVs were towed away and the last of the suspects were transported, Reeves approached Maya. She was sitting on the muddy bank, shaking, the adrenaline finally wearing off. "You shouldn't have done that," he said, but his tone was more impressed than angry. "Walking out there like that, you could have been killed." "I'm tired of being scared," Maya said simply. "I've been scared my whole life. Scared of being poor, of failing my son, of what people think of me. I bought a sinking prison because I was too scared to stay in the life I had." She looked up at him. "But I'm not scared anymore." Reeves sat down beside her. "The paperwork's going to take months, probably years. The insurance company, the claims, the legal proceedings. But that reward, it's real. You're going to be a very wealthy woman, Miss Rodriguez." "I just wanted a home," Maya said quietly. "Somewhere safe for Daniel. Somewhere we belonged. You found a lot more than that." Over the following months, the story exploded across national news. Single mother finds 287 million in gems in sunken prison. The headlines screamed. Maya's face was everywhere. Talk shows called. Movie producers sent offers. Publishers wanted book deals. But Maya stayed focused on what mattered. She hired lawyers, good ones, to navigate the complex legal process of claiming her reward. She worked with financial advisors to plan for a future she'd never imagined possible. And most importantly, she stayed present for Daniel, making sure his life stayed as normal as possible despite the chaos. The insurance company tried to negotiate the reward percentage down, but Maya's lawyers fought back. In the end, the courts sided with Maya. She'd risked her life, used her own property, and led to the recovery of stolen gems that had been missing for 30 years. She deserved every penny of the 10% reward. When the final check cleared, Maya Rodriguez had 28,7 million in her bank account. The first thing she did was call Patricia Owens, the auctioneer who'd warned her about the property. "I want to buy the prison," Maya said, properly this time. "With real money." Patricia laughed. "You already own it, honey. I want to restore it. Turn it into something good. A community center, maybe. Job training facilities. Something that helps people instead of hurting them. That's going to cost millions. I have millions." The Riverside community didn't know how to react at first. The people who'd laughed at Maya, who'd called her crazy, who'd said she was wasting her money, now approached her with apologies, with respect, with requests for help. Some she forgave easily. Others took more time. But she tried to remember what it felt like to be dismissed, to be underestimated, and she tried to show grace, even to those who'd shown her none. Gary, her former landlord, was one of the last to apologize. He showed up at the construction site where crews were restoring the prison, hat literally in hand. "I was wrong about you," he said simply. "About everything. I'm sorry." Maya studied him for a moment. He looked older, smaller than she remembered. "You were scared," she said finally. "Scared that if someone like me could succeed, it would mean you had no excuse for your own failures. I understand that fear now. I've felt it." "That's generous," Gary said, surprised. "I can afford to be generous now." The restoration took 2 years. Maya poured 15 million into the project, hiring local contractors, creating jobs, transforming the sunken prison into the Riverside Community Center. The Western Wing became training facilities for job skills and continuing education. The Eastern Wing, once flooded, was drained and converted into affordable apartments for families transitioning out of homelessness. The Warden's chamber, where Maya had found the vault, became a museum exhibit. The story of the heist, the hiding place, the recovery, all documented for visitors. But the centerpiece of the exhibit was something else. A plaque, simple and direct, dedicated to everyone who's been dismissed, overlooked, or mocked for believing they deserve more. Sometimes, the greatest treasures are hidden where no one else dares to look. The ribbon-cutting ceremony drew hundreds of people. Local officials, state representatives, even the governor showed up. But the speech that mattered most came from Daniel, now 18 years old, speaking clearly into the microphone. "My mum taught me that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared," he said. "It means you do the right thing even when you are scared." She bought a sinking prison when everyone laughed. She dove into dangerous water when everyone said it was stupid, and she used what she found to help people instead of just helping herself. He looked at Maya, standing beside him. "I'm proud of you, Mom." Maya couldn't speak. She just hugged her son, tears streaming down her face, aware that this moment right here, was worth more than all the gems in the world. Agent Reeves attended the ceremony, along with Dr. Chen. They'd become friends over the past 2 years, bonded by the shared experience of the recovery operation. "You know," Reeves said to Maya during the reception, "in 20 years with the FBI, I've worked hundreds of cases, but this one's going in the history books. Not because of the monetary value, though that's significant, but because of you, because you prove that sometimes the most unlikely people end up being the most important." "I was just trying to survive," Maya said. "That's what makes it remarkable. You weren't looking for glory or fame. You were looking for a home, and you found a purpose instead." As the sun set over the Clearwater River, Maya stood on the bank where she'd first seen the sunken prison 3 years ago. The building looked completely different now. Restored, painted, lit from within with warm light. No longer a monument to suffering, but a beacon of hope. She thought of all the people who'd laughed at her. Most had apologized. Some had become allies in her community work. A few still whispered behind her back, unable to accept that the poor single mother had become someone important. But their opinions didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the lives changed by the community center, the families housed in the apartments, the people trained in new skills, the hope restored. And it had all started with 650 and the willingness to see potential where everyone else saw only ruin. Daniel ran up to her, excited. "Mom, they're asking for you inside. They want to take more pictures." Maya took his hand. "Let's go then." As they walked toward the building, she glanced back one more time at the river. Somewhere down there, in the flooded sections that had been permanently sealed after the recovery, sat an empty vault, the hiding place of Warden Castellano's stolen fortune. But the real treasure, Maya knew, wasn't the gems. It was what the gems had allowed her to become, not just wealthy, but purposeful, not just vindicated, but victorious, not just a single mother mocked for her dreams, but a woman who'd transformed those dreams into reality. The community center would serve thousands of people over the coming decades. Families would be rebuilt, skills would be learned, lives would be changed. And it all existed because one woman refused to let mockery stop her from taking a chance. Sometimes the best investments aren't measured in dollars and cents. Sometimes they're measured in courage, determination, and the willingness to dive into the dark unknown when everyone else is too afraid to try. Maya Rodriguez had spent 650 on a sunken prison. She'd found 277 million in stolen gems. But what she'd really discovered was something much more valuable. Her own strength, her own worth, her own power to transform not just her own life, but the lives of everyone around her. And that, in the end, was worth more than all the treasures in all the vaults in all the world. 5 years after the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Maya sat in her office on the 3rd floor of the community center, the same floor where she'd once discovered the sealed warden's chamber. The room had been completely transformed. Floor-to-ceiling windows now offered views of the river, and the walls displayed photos of families who'd been helped by the center's programs. Her assistant, Jennifer, a young woman who'd been one of the first graduates of their job training program, knocked softly on the open door. "Maya, there's someone here to see you," she says. "It's personal." Maya looked up from the grant proposal she'd been reviewing. Did she give a name? Eleanor Harrington. The name struck Maya like lightning. She'd heard it before, researched it during the investigation. Eleanor Harrington had been mentioned in some of the historical documents about similar cases, families who'd disappeared under mysterious circumstances in the 1990s. But that Eleanor would be ancient by now, if she was even still alive. "Send her in," Maya said, curiosity overwhelming caution. The woman who entered was in her late 70s, elegant despite her age, with sharp blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She walked with a cane, but her posture was straight, dignified. "Miss Rodriguez," the woman said, extending her hand. "Thank you for seeing me without an appointment. I'm Eleanor Harrington, though not the one you might have heard about. That was my aunt, my namesake. I was named after her when I was born in 1947, the year after she and her family vanished." Maya gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Please, sit. Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" Water would be lovely. After Jennifer brought in 2 glasses of water and quietly closed the door, Eleanor settled into her chair with a sigh. "I've been following your story, Miss Rodriguez. The prison, the gems, what you've built here. It's extraordinary. Thank you, but I'm not sure I understand why you've come." Eleanor reached into her handbag and pulled out an old leather journal, its pages yellowed and brittle. My aunt left this with a family friend before she disappeared. It was given to me on my 21st birthday, along with instructions not to open it until I felt the time was right. I opened it 56 years ago, and I've been carrying the weight of what's inside ever since." She placed the journal on Maya's desk. "Your discovery, your courage, reminded me that some secrets aren't meant to be kept forever. Some truths need to see daylight, no matter how painful." Maya opened the journal carefully. The handwriting was elegant, feminine, and as she read, the room seemed to grow colder. The entries detailed a network that had operated during and after World War II. Powerful men who'd used the chaos of the era to steal fortunes from wealthy families, often making those families disappear entirely. The operation had continued for decades, evolving, adapting, always hiding behind legitimate fronts. Warden Castellano had been part of it, but he'd made a fatal mistake. He'd kept a fortune for himself instead of turning it over to the organization. That's why he died, and why the gems had stayed hidden for so long. The organization couldn't find them, and they couldn't risk drawing attention by searching too openly. "There are names in here," Maya said, scanning the pages. "Government officials, business leaders, people who are still alive today." "I know," Eleanor said quietly. "I've spent my entire adult life wondering what to do with this information. I was afraid, Miss Rodriguez. Afraid of what might happen if I spoke up. Afraid of ending up like my aunt and her family." She leaned forward. "But watching what you've done, how you refused to be intimidated, how you used your discovery to help others, it gave me courage I didn't know I still had." Maya closed the journal, her mind racing. "This needs to go to the authorities. The FBI, maybe a congressional committee. I know. And I'd like you to be the one to deliver it. You have credibility I never could. You've already exposed one part of this conspiracy. You can help expose the rest. Mrs. Harrington, I'm not an investigator. You're just a single mother who bought a sinking prison and found one of the largest stolen fortunes in history." Eleanor smiled. "Don't diminish what you are, Miss Rodriguez. You're exactly the person who can make a difference." Over the next 6 months, Maya worked with Agent Reeves and a special federal task force, using Eleanor's journal as a roadmap to uncover corruption that stretched back 8 decades. The investigation led to the arrests of 3 sitting congressmen, 2 federal judges, and the CEOs of 4 major corporations. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. Billions of dollars stolen over generations, families destroyed, lives erased, and it had all been hiding in plain sight, protected by wealth and power. But the journal also led to something else. Closure for families who'd spent generations wondering what had happened to their loved ones. Through the detailed records Eleanor's aunt had kept, investigators located burial sites, recovered remains, and finally gave dozens of families the answers they'd been searching for. Maya testified before Congress, her words broadcast live across the nation. She spoke about her grandfather, who'd sensed something wrong at Blackstone but hadn't known the full scope. She spoke about Eleanor Harrington, both of them, the aunt who'd documented the truth, and the niece who'd finally brought it to light. And she spoke about the responsibility that came with discovering secrets, with uncovering truths that powerful people wanted to keep buried. "I bought a sunken prison because I needed a home," she told the congressional committee. "But what I found there changed my understanding of what home means. It's not just shelter, it's justice, it's truth, it's the courage to stand up even when you're terrified. If we want to build homes worth living in, we have to be willing to excavate the foundations, no matter what we find buried there." The testimony went viral. Maya became, against her will, a public figure, an advocate for transparency and justice. Universities invited her to speak. Non-profits asked her to join their boards. She received hundreds of letters from people who'd been inspired by her story, who'd taken chances they'd been afraid to take, who'd spoken truths they'd been afraid to voice. But the attention also brought danger. 3 separate attempts were made on her life, all thwarted by the security team. Agent Reeves insisted she maintain. Anonymous threats arrived daily. Her son, now 16, needed protection whenever he left the house. One night, after a particularly frightening incident where someone had tried to breach their home security, Daniel found Maya sitting alone in the community center, staring out at the river. "You're thinking about giving up," he said. It wasn't a question. Maya didn't deny it. "I'm thinking about whether all of this is worth putting you in danger. Whether I should have just taken the reward money and disappeared somewhere safe." Daniel sat beside her. "Do you remember what you told me the day we first saw this place? You said sometimes the best things look scary at first." "I remember. This is scary, Mum. Really scary. But it's also the best thing. Look at what you've built. Look at the families living in those apartments who'd be homeless without you. Look at the people getting job training, getting second chances. Look at all those families who finally know what happened to their grandparents and great-grandparents. But if something happened to you, then I'd have lived knowing my mum was a hero." Daniel interrupted. "Instead of dying slowly, knowing she was too scared to matter. You taught me that. You can't unteak it now." Maya pulled her son close. This young man who'd inherited her stubborn courage. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from the best." The threats continued, but so did the work. Maya expanded the community center's programs, using her platform to advocate for criminal justice reform, for transparency in government, for protection of whistleblowers. She established the Eleanor Harrington Foundation, dedicated to helping families search for missing relatives and uncovering historical injustices. Eleanor herself became a close friend and mentor. The 2 women spent hours together, Eleanor sharing stories of her aunt, Maya sharing her dreams for the future. When Eleanor passed away peacefully at 83, she left her entire estate to Maya's foundation, along with a letter that Maya read through tears. "You gave me the courage to finally speak the truth," Eleanor had written. "You showed me that one person, no matter how ordinary they seem, can change the world. Thank you for letting an old woman finally rest easy, knowing the secrets she carried have become seeds of justice." On the 10-year anniversary of buying the prison, Maya stood before a crowd of thousands gathered for the celebration. The community center had expanded to 3 additional buildings. Over Pięć, 0 families had been housed through their programs. More than 12, 0 people had completed job training. The impact rippled outward, touching lives in ways Maya was still discovering. But the speech she gave that day wasn't about statistics or success stories. It was about the people who'd laughed at her a decade earlier. "I want to talk about mockery," she began, her voice carrying across the crowd. 10 years ago, I stood at an auction and raised my hand to buy a building everyone said was worthless. And people laughed. They called me stupid, crazy, foolish. Some of you were in that crowd." She paused, scanning the audience. Many of those same people sat before her now, some looking uncomfortable, others nodding with understanding. "I want to thank you for that mockery," Maya continued, "because it freed me. Once you've been laughed at for taking a risk, once you've been called crazy for believing in something, you stop caring what other people think. And that's when you become dangerous. Not dangerous in a violent way, but dangerous to the status quo. Dangerous to the systems that tell us to stay small, stay quiet, stay in our place." The prison I bought was literally sinking into a river, but metaphorically, we're all standing in front of sinking buildings, structures of injustice and inequality that everyone says are too big to change, too broken to fix. And the world will laugh at you if you try. They'll call you naive, idealistic, foolish. Let them laugh. Because sometimes the greatest act of courage is raising your hand when everyone else is walking away. Sometimes the most valuable discoveries are hidden in the places everyone says aren't worth exploring. And sometimes the people society dismisses, single mothers, immigrants, the poor, the overlooked, are exactly the people who can see what needs to change. The crowd rose to their feet, applause thundering across the riverside. But Maya wasn't finished. This community center exists because I was willing to be mocked. The families living in our housing exist because I was willing to be called crazy. The truth about decades of corruption came to light because I was willing to dive into dangerous water when everyone said I should stay safe on shore. So if you're standing in front of your own sinking building right now, if you have a dream, everyone says, is impossible. If you're thinking about taking a risk, everyone calls foolish. I have one thing to say to you. Raise your hand. Buy the prison. Dive into the water. Let them laugh. Because on the other side of that mockery is a life you can't even imagine yet. A purpose that will make every whisper, every doubt, every cruel word absolutely worth it. After the celebration, as the crowd dispersed and the sun set over the Clearwater River, Maya found herself back at the Riverside bank, where it had all begun. Daniel, now 20 and studying social work in college, joined her. "Do you ever wish you could go back?" he asked. "Tell that version of yourself what was about to happen." Maya thought about it. "No," she said finally. Because she wouldn't have believed it, and even if she did, knowing the outcome would have changed how she approached it. The courage came from not knowing, from taking the risk anyway. No regrets? Oh, plenty of regrets. Mistakes I made. People I couldn't help. Dangers I put us in. She looked at her son. But not about raising my hand that day. Never about that. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the last light fade from the sky. The community center glowed behind them. Every window a story, every light a life changed. "I've been thinking," Daniel said. "After I graduate, I want to open another center. Maybe in Portland, where the gems were originally stolen. Turn that story full circle too." Maya smiled. "Is this you asking for funding or telling me your plans?" "Both. Then I guess you learned something else. From me. Never ask permission to do the right thing." As stars began to appear overhead, Maya thought about the journey from that rainy morning at the auction to this moment. She thought about her grandfather, who'd planted the seed of curiosity about the prison, about Eleanor Harrington and her aunt, who'd documented truth when it was dangerous to do so, about Agent Reeves and Dr. Chen, who'd believed in her when they could have dismissed her, about every person who'd been housed, trained, or helped through the programs she'd built. But mostly she thought about that moment of decision, standing at the auction with 600 pięćdziesiąt in her pocket and a town full of people ready to laugh. That moment when she could have walked away, played it safe, stayed small, she'd raised her hand instead. And in doing so, she'd raised herself, her son, her community, and countless others who'd heard her story and found courage in it. The prison no longer existed as a prison. It had been transformed, rebuilt, reimagined. But its legacy remained, not as a place of punishment, but as a testament to what was possible when one person refused to accept the world's limitations. Maya Rodriguez had bought a sinking prison for 650. She'd found 287 million in stolen gems. She'd exposed corruption spanning 8 decades. She'd built a community center that served thousands. But her greatest discovery wasn't treasure, or truth, or vindication. It was the realization that ordinary people, given extraordinary courage, could change everything. That single mothers, dismissed and mocked, could become architects of justice. That sometimes the most valuable inheritance wasn't wealth, but the willingness to dive into the unknown when everyone else stayed safely on shore. The river flowed on beside them, constant and patient, carrying away the past, while the future glowed bright in the windows of what was once Blackstone Correctional Facility and was now the Riverside Community Center, a beacon of hope where a prison had once stood, proof that even the deepest, darkest places could be transformed by one person's courage to raise their hand and say, "I'll take it." And in the end, that was worth more than all the gems, in all the vaults, in all the sunken prisons in the world.